Good afternoon, fifth period. How was your weekend? Did you do anything fun or interesting or exciting over the weekend? Just as a reminder, remember that I said that I was going to be here today because I'm in Chicago. My husband ran the Chicago Marathon. So hopefully you guys already watched the video about the last two slides of notes. Today, what we're going to do next is that I want you to get out your production schedule from last week. And then if you have not already gotten a calculator from the box of calculators that is sitting on my desk, please get that. Either that or if you want to use your iPad, you can do that. So the sub can pause the video right now. Make sure that you get out your production schedule and your calculator. Okay, so hopefully you have everything by now. So we are going to fill in the last three columns. So the first column that we're going to fill in today is going to be the one that you've first talked about today in notes, which was total revenue. So if you remember from when we talked about total revenue for demand, total revenue is going to be the amount totally spent on a product at a particular price. So what we are going to do is we're going to take total revenue, and at the very bottom here where it says equations, okay, I'm going to make this nice and big for you to be able to read it. But total revenue, we are going to say, is the price of the product times total product. Okay, so the price of the product times total product. And I want you to put a little asterisk next to the price so that you remember this. You can write it down. Mrs. Stout will always give price. Okay, I will always give the price to you. So in a few minutes after this video is done, you are going to get a practice worksheet with all 10 columns. Okay, you're going to have to do the whole thing. At the top, it will tell you what the price is in the instructions. So it'll say, like, for example, when the price is $20 or whatever. Okay, so make sure you pay attention to that, but I will always give you the price. Now, for your guys' airplane activity, based on your numbers from last week and what the costs were, I decided that the price for this particular one, we are going to say that the price is 67 cents. I know it sounds like a very odd, strange number, but it'll make sense in the end. So 67 cents. So to figure out total revenue, we are going to take 67 cents and we're going to multiply it by total product, which is this column here. Remember that? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking 67 cents times that column. So to start with, at 0 workers, we're taking 67 cents times 0, because 0 workers, we didn't make anything. So obviously our total revenue is 0. Okay? At 1 worker, we're taking 3 times 67 cents. So 3 times 67 cents is actually $2.01. Then you're going to take 3 times 7. So 3 times 7 is $4.69. Then you're going to take, for 3 workers, 12 times 67 cents, which is $8.04, if I can type. Okay. Now I'm going to have the sub pause the video right here, and I want you to fill in the rest. So take 67 cents times the rest of the total product. Once the video is restarted again, the rest of the total revenues will be in the column. So you should have figured out total revenue by now. We left off with 4 workers. So 4 workers, you should have $12.73. At 5 workers, you should have $18.09. At 6 workers, you should have $24.79. At 7 workers, $30.15. 8 workers, $32.83. 9 workers, $34.84. And at 10 workers, $31.49. Okay, now we're going on to the next column. So the next column is going to be marginal revenue. So marginal revenue, if you remember from your notes, is going to be more about how much extra I'm going to make when I sell 1 more airplane. So think about this. How much more am I going to make because I sell 1 more airplane? Well, if I'm selling 1 more airplane and the price we know is down here, the price is 67 cents. Okay, marginal revenue is going to be the same thing as the price. You can include this on your equations part. Okay, marginal revenue is equal to the price. It's the same thing as the price. Okay, so marginal revenue is the same thing as the price. So when we fill this in, you can fill in the price except for the first one, so for 0 workers, and for the last one. The reason is just like when we talked about marginal cost and marginal product. For the first one, 0 workers, we didn't add anything. For the last one, for 10 workers, okay, we have a negative marginal product. Okay, so we can't have a negative revenue. It wouldn't work. So the rest of them, you can fill in 67 cents. And so to fill in 67 cents, I'm actually going to do some copying and pasting. So fill in 67 cents, because remember, that is how much we would get from selling one more airplane. All right, now we're on our last column. And our last column is called profit or loss. Are we making money or are we losing money? So if we're looking at profit or loss, we have to look at how much totally we made from selling our airplanes, obviously, hypothetically, and how much it cost us to actually produce our airplanes. So in order to figure out profit or loss, on the bottom, we are going to have the equation is P or L, so profit or loss, is equal to total revenue, so that's how much we totally made from selling our airplanes, minus total cost, how much it cost us to actually produce our airplanes. So we are looking at these two columns. So this column right here, and I'm going to actually highlight it so you guys can see, remind you what we're looking at, and this column right here. Okay, so profit or loss, we're taking total revenue minus total cost. So try and ignore the rest of the stuff up there for a minute. Okay, so total revenue at 0 workers, we're taking 0 minus 12. So as a result, we have a loss of $12. So if you remember, okay, the 0 is evident because, you know, we didn't make anything, so we don't have anything to sell. But remember, we had a total cost of $12 because we had those fixed costs that we still had to pay for. So that rent and paper that we had to pay for before we actually made anything. All right. Now, at 1 worker, we're going to subtract $2.01 minus $14. So if you do that, we're going to have a loss of $11.99. At 2 workers, we're going to subtract $4.69 minus $16. So if you do that, you're going to have a loss of $11.31. At 3 workers, you're going to subtract $8.04 minus $18. So again, you're going to have a loss. You're going to have a loss of $9.96. All right, so I'm going to have the sub pause the video again. I want you to figure out the rest of the profit or loss, and when the video is started up again, it will be filled in magically. Should have the rest of the profit or loss columns filled in. So we left off with 4 workers. So at 4 workers, you should have a loss of $7.27. At 5 workers, you should have a loss of $3.91. At 6 workers, woohoo, we're making money, 79 cents. At 7 workers, we have a profit of $4.15. At 8 workers, we have a profit of $4.83. At 9 workers, we have a profit of $4.84. And at 10 workers, we have a loss of 51 cents. Okay, so hopefully you have all that done. Now, here's what we're doing with this, because now that we have the whole thing completed, now the question is, what was the point? Why did we do this? Well, remember when we started this whole thing last week, and we talked about that this is looking at the short run, and we're looking at how many airplanes and how much it cost us to add 1 more worker in the short run, because remember, the short run, that's the only thing that can change. So ultimately, what we're using this to decide is okay, how many workers should we actually hire? Should we hire all 10 people, or should we stop and we hire only a few of them? Okay. Does it have anything to do with any of these numbers? Well, if you remember from the last video that you watched, you should have taken some notes on break-even point and the profit maximizing point. Once we have this whole thing completed, we can actually determine those 2 points. So first of all, the break-even point. The break-even point is when total cost equals total revenue. We're not making any money, but we're not losing any money. So we want to look for a point where total revenue and total costs are equal. Now, if you think about it, the profit or loss column, we just use total revenue and total cost to figure out the profit or loss column. So theoretically, we should have a point where it is exactly zero, because if the total revenue and total costs are equal, when we subtract them, it should equal zero. Now, obviously, you can look very quickly on the profit or loss column. We don't have a point where they're exactly zero. So does that mean we don't have a break-even point? No. Now we have to look at where we're going from a loss to a profit. So if you'll notice between 5 and 6 workers, okay, we go from a loss to a profit. And I'm going to actually make this red. So we go from a loss to a profit between 5 workers and 6 workers. So somewhere in between 5 and 6 workers, we actually have the break-even point where we are exactly at 0. Now, inevitably, I have somebody that asks me, how can you have 5.5 workers? And some smart aleck will usually respond, what about a dwarf? Okay, no. Okay, 5.5 workers. What about part-time? Okay, a part-time person is considered quote unquote a half worker. Okay, so somewhere in between here is our break-even point. So I'm actually going to put in a comment that this is our break-even point. So remember, break-even point is going to be where we're going from a loss to a profit. That's where we're breaking even. Now, the last point that we can determine, the most important point, is the profit maximizing point. How many workers should we actually hire? So if you remember from our notes, our profit maximizing point is going to be where our profit is the highest and our marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So as you can tell, if we're looking at our profit or loss column, our profit is the highest at 9 workers. So I'm going to actually make this blue. And at 9 workers, our profit or loss is the highest. Our profit is the highest. But also notice that our marginal cost, okay, our marginal cost is the same as our marginal revenue. Okay, sometimes, and it worked out beautifully with this one, that we actually had a profit that is significant, is higher than anything else, and it's very clear. However, sometimes I have a lot of times where these profits, 2 of them are exactly the same. And then so then somebody says, well, then you can hire either the 8th or 9th worker. No, you have to have where marginal cost and marginal revenue are the same. There's only one profit maximizing point. So it has to be where the profit is the highest and marginal cost and marginal revenue the same. The reason being is that, think about it, if we're talking about the short run, okay, we added 1 more worker. Technically speaking, it really didn't cost me anything more to hire the 9th worker because they made up for it in the amount of revenue I got from them actually making airplanes. So it was a good thing. So in the long run, when I want to expand, that 9th worker is already there. They already know what they're doing. Okay, so there's one answer to this. So our one profit maximizing point is going to be at, oops, can't spell. The one profit maximizing point is going to be at 9 workers. So I'm actually going to highlight this to remind you that this is our profit maximizing point. That's how many workers we should actually hire. We're getting the highest profit, and our marginal cost equals our marginal revenue. All right, this ends the video on how to fill in our airplane activity. In a minute, you will get a worksheet from the sub that practices the whole thing. Okay, use each other, help each other, use calculators. Tomorrow in class, I will give you the answer key to that, and I will answer any questions that you have. Good luck.